Everyone, and welcome to a video on Titanfall. Now, today we're going to be going my thoughts and feelings on the game. I did post a first impressions video on Titanfall 2 yesterday, which didn't have any gameplay. It was rather negative, I'm not going to lie about that. And I still stand by the first impressions. Now, I've only played about 40 minutes of this game so far. They've taken down the servers currently. So you are watching about 25 minutes worth of footage, maybe a bit less than that, of gameplay. Now, a small disclaimer needs to be added here, which is I did not play Titanfall 1 at all. I didn't have a platform available which allowed me to play it, so there is that. So I'm coming into this as a new person to the series, a franchise. I don't think Titanfall 2 is a bad game per se. But it's clear that there has been a clear change in direction compared to the original. The implementation is strikingly different compared to the original. The atmosphere is completely different to the original. It's much more scaled back. The AI is gone. So you no longer have little minions following around the battlefield. It doesn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It feels more like an arena. You're going against players. It's less player versus environment and more player versus player now. I'm not sure if I like this change, being honest with you. I honestly think that a player versus environment is much more interesting, and we haven't had that experience before. Whereas if you compare it to a lot of other games, they already have player versus player, and they bring something else to the table. And Titanfall really, it doesn't. It doesn't do it at all. Plus, as well, the movement mechanics are actually somewhat redesigned. They've got more weight to them. They're over floaty compared to the original Titanfall, from my understanding that is. And you can actually feel this. The fundamental concept behind map design is also different as well. Movement seems to take a secondary objective over primary in this iteration of the game, which is quite interesting. Because the result is a more grounded experience instead of a highly mobile game. It's obvious that the design philosophy is completely different compared to the original. Even with these minor changes to the game, it changes everything. It changes how the entire game plays. In some ways, it feels like they're scaling back from what made the original Titanfall unique. It's a shell of its former self, and I'm not too sure on the direction which they want to take it, being honest with you. Now, of course, it's worth pointing out that pretty much every single developer is trying to take a slice out of a tiny pie when it comes to gaming audiences. There's not many gamers that actually buy games in reality, which is why a lot of indie developers struggle. So they are looking for a tiny slice of the pie. So they've probably done some of these changes to get more of that pie. And honestly, I feel this is a really bad idea, in my honest opinion. I could be wrong. It could be they've made these changes because it makes the game better. In their opinion, it's their vision of the game. But, I don't know. The compromise has been made so far has turned Titanfall from being a unique movement-based shooter towards a gradually more grounded game that's quite honestly is, well, boring. The game doesn't really have anything else to it, if that makes sense. It suffers from the fact that the game isn't about Titans, not too much in this current build anyway, and the game doesn't really have a movement system which lends itself to the combat, and the game doesn't feel like it does anything unique or different. It exists. It feels like it's taken ideas and philosophies and from other games, and instead it's become, what's the best way of putting it, confused, unable to decide whether it should be about this or something else, or should be about mobility. There's a real sense and feeling in my mind that there's a limitation of what other shooters have been doing and what Titanfall should be copying, and it just isn't doing something on its own at all, if that makes sense. Now, the map design also seems to play a very big role in this. We have had changes to the movement system. It is pretty obvious if you play it and compare it to videos from Titanfall 1. The map design as well is completely different. There seems to be a more focus on the horizontal playing field, as opposed to vertical. Now, the previous title, from my understanding, was vertical gameplay, which was actually really hectic. Players could exploit the map design to move about quickly. It was all about moving. You could avoid touching the ground if you were good enough. But in my limited playtime, it seems to indicate that they've gone against this style, and it's very hard to actually repeat doing that. You can't just constantly keep moving. You can't constantly keep being on the go. You have to sort of ground yourself every now and again, and you ground yourself, I would say, 70 to 60% of the time, compared to, I'm guessing, the original Titanfall. Now, it wouldn't be a problem if the combat was different and challenging, and well, it's not. The combat is very, I'm going to say, laser beamish focused guns. They're very, very easy to use. They're very low recoil, and they kill very, very quickly. So there isn't anything else there. They haven't added any like mechanics melee wise to make the game more difficult. They haven't added any more depth to it. They've created a very shallow shell of what Titanfall used to be, and they created a very shallow shell in general, in my honest opinion, that is. The focus seems to be on map design wise, is more on like open maps over the movement, and the movement doesn't really suit the map design in its current form. The map design in some ways feels more like a prison instead of a playground compared to the original Titanfall, from what I've seen so far, that is, because I didn't play the original. I could be wrong, and it could require players to look at the map differently in order to make the movement make more sense, but currently, as of right now, it just feels like the movement's been tapped on, as opposed to a fundamental design that is important for you to master and learn. The movement has now got a weight to it, as I said earlier. You can't jump as high, you can't move as fast, you don't gain as much momentum. The movement system has been toned down for whatever reason, it feels like it. Designers obviously want a slower, less hectic gameplay that's less vertical based and more horizontal, which is understandable. It's their game, they can decide what they want to do with it. But it feels like it's completely pointless to move during combat, apart from just outside basic strafing, as opposed to the previous titles who, if you looked at the previous title, that is, you could see people doing strafe jumps, they were jumping everywhere, they were double jumping, etc. But in this game, it just feels like that's not very useful. It's more whoever sees who first, as opposed to whoever moves the best, whoever has the best aim. So I'm not too sure what to make of it, but it feels like you're extremely limited what you can do. Now, Titanfall 1 did suffer from an extreme lack of content, which manifested it in people said, oh, this game doesn't have depth, it's boring, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. But the real fundamental problem was it had a serious lack of content. It didn't have that many weapons that were different and unique to each other. It didn't have that many maps that were different and unique to each other. It didn't have many different gameplay experiences within the game. The game was very much about running about, moving, and learning to use the Titan, as opposed to having a bunch of different weapons in every category to learn and play with. You have to, when it comes to any first-person shooter, have a game which gives players various experiences to make sure that they stay interested. And one of the best examples I can give you is a first-person shooter, so that you need to have as many different guns as you can on offer. Now, based on what we've seen so far, I do understand that they haven't released all the content, but it feels like it's extremely limited at the moment, and I am a little bit concerned. There's no like bits of information to say, hey, we have 15 or more guns available to you, but they're not in the current game because they're not finished. There's no like hints of that at all. There could be, but it feels like the development team has overall focused on the wrong sort of content, and instead decided to add a linear progression system, as opposed to more actual content-based items, for example, like guns, maps, etc. I could be wrong, I'm willing to admit that, but I just get a sneaky suspicion and feeling It's unknown whether or not the development team has produced enough content to keep people interested, or what content they've actually made so far. But I hope they have. I hope they have learnt some of the lessons from the past game, in which people were rightly so complaining about the lack of content, because the game was lacking. It was pretty much skin deep. It was a what's the best way of putting it? A game that didn't have enough substance behind it, but had an interesting premise. I think that's the best way of putting it. Now, it feels like they've abandoned all the original team, the original game had, and they didn't have enough courage to carry on with it and make a safe sequel. Instead, they've pretty much changed most of the core of the game, and they pretty much changed the entire direction, so there is that. The last time I saw a company do this was with Killzone, and that was with Guerrilla Games, and they honestly produced I would say one of the best games ever, first-person shooter was, which was Killzone 2, and then they backtracked and ruined it, in my opinion. And then they produced lackluster sequels after that, and well, that series then died out. I really hope that is not the case with Titanfall. I really hope that they have produced something that is going to stay around for quite a while, but you never know. Okay, so overall, I don't mind this game. I just find it, I found it boring to play. In all honesty, I found that certain things didn't quite make sense in the settings that they offered me. I also found as well that the movement was, well, I was expecting the movement to be super important and useful, and it's just not very useful and important. You can see here I'm literally just shooting and standing still, as opposed to moving about and using the movement in combat. So yeah, I honestly hope that this game is not dead on arrival, but I feel that they have learnt the wrong lessons from the previous game, and it probably is not going to last that long, in my honest opinion. I could be wrong, I am willing to admit that. Overall, I am going to be playing a bit more Titanfall, but these are my current thoughts and feelings, and expanding on what I've played so far. You can see here I'm trying to get up top because I think, oh, I've got this cool movement system, and it just won't let me. The game feels like it's artificially limiting players when it comes to its movement, and it's doing so deliberately, and I'm not a fan of that. I want to be able to move about the map. I want to be able to transfer pretty much every single direction. I want to be jumping and fighting in the air, and the game doesn't let me do that, not consistently in a way that makes sense. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad game. I am going to repeat that line a lot. It's not a game for me at the moment, but I could be wrong. I may have not played it enough. The game does feel very, and I hate to say this, Call of Duty-esque, Call of Duty inspired, very much all about whoever sees who first, as opposed to anything else, and very much a very small minor focus on anything else. It's very shallow currently, which is a great shame because I would have loved a non-shallow shooter, but they've seemed to have changed complete direction and not had the courage to respect what they originally made, which is fine. Honestly, it is fine, but I do feel that they should have not gone down this route. They should have actually produced a game that was very similar to the last one, instead of just completely changing more than half of it. Now, I don't think I will be picking up this game currently. I will be playing more of the test when it comes back live, but currently that's my thoughts and feelings on Titanfall. I have tried to structure it in a way that makes somewhat sense. I hope you have enjoyed watching, and I will see you again next time. I will probably be live streaming this at some point, but prepare for Rage because I'm not very good at this title currently. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next time.